Hello. Now we're going to have a quick chat about the language of probability, the way that we describe probabilities in English. So to that end, the most important thing to keep track of in the background of our minds with probability is this number line type situation, which starts at 0 and ends at 1. The largest probability that we can ever have is a probability of 1, and it means that something is certain to happen, or that it will happen. So probability is a practical area of mathematics. So we don't have to worry about things being absolutely theoretically certain. We could say something like the sun will rise tomorrow has a probability of 1, because for all intents and purposes, the sun is definitely going to rise tomorrow. If it doesn't, we have bigger concerns than probability. Now, on the other end of the scale, we have things that are impossible. And we can have things that are logically impossible, that are definitely a probability of 0, and we can have things that are just extremely unlikely, and we'd say that they're pretty much impossible. And in between, we have lots of fractions that we could have. So any fraction between 0 and 1 is a possible number probability. And in the middle, we're already familiar with situations that would have a probability of a half or 0.5, or we would also say, because we know that the different ways of writing things, that would also be a probability of 50%. The number probabilities are really what's important, but in terms of reading questions and understanding probability, we have to be comfortable with some language around it too. So what would be an example of a few of these things? Let's start out with example 1. There will be 8 days this week. Well, by definition, we say there are 7 days in a week. So this is impossible because it's logically impossible. So we can say that this would be impossible. It would have a probability. P, capital P for probability, would be equal to 0. So it would be impossible. Next one. If I flip a coin, I will get a head. If I flip a coin, I will get a head. Well, the probability of getting a head when I flip a coin is a half. We know that fairly intuitively. There are 2 possible outcomes. We could get a head or a tail, and then our probability is going to be a half. So the probability there, capital P for probability, is going to be 0.5 or a half. You can write it as a fraction or as a decimal or as a percentage. All are perfectly acceptable. If I roll a dice, I will get a number between 1 and 6. Well, that's all of the possible outcomes. I could get a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6 when I roll a die or roll a dice. So that covers all possible outcomes. So one of them is certainly going to happen. So I would say that I had a probability of 100%. Or, important to remember, a probability of 1. This idea that probability of all of our outcomes, all of our possible outcomes being 1, is very important for more advanced probability. Now, I've given number answers to these problems. What would I say in English? Almost always we'll be dealing with numbers, so this is the more important bit, but we do need to be able to associate language with it. So we would say that this was impossible. The probability of 0 was impossible. There cannot be 8 days in the week. We could say that this was 50-50 for flipping a coin and getting a head. Or we could say that it was certain, or that it will happen, when we say that we have a probability of 1. And that's what we need for the language of probability.